Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Religious Freedoms and Cultural Diversity. First speaker is Mr. Kouroukolas on behalf of Madam Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. President, honourable members. The issues addressed in the Parliament draft resolution are diverse and very important and wide-ranging. Let me comment on behalf of High Representative Vice President Cathy Ashton on some elements that could help fueling today's debate. The European Union intends to carry on promoting and defending internally and externally the very principles on which it was built: respect of human rights, democracy and the rule of law. With the adoption in June 2012 of the EU Strategic Framework on Human Rights and Democracy, the European Union recalled that throughout the world, women and men demanded to live in liberty, dignity and security in open and democratic societies underpinned by human rights and the rule of law. The EU committed itself to enhanced efforts in upholding the universality of these values. One of the first outcomes of the 2012 strategy was the adoption of European Union guidelines on freedom of religion or belief to be used in its external policies. These guidelines have been used in delegations and headquarters to better engage with third countries bilaterally and multilaterally, notably in the fight against all forms of intolerance and discrimination on grounds of religion or belief, and in the implementation of the relevant UN resolutions in this field. Furthermore, in a joint statement made on the 20th of September 2012, the High Representative and the representatives of three organisations, the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, the African Union and the Arab League, called for peace and tolerance between religions, expressed their common belief in the fundamental importance of religious freedom and tolerance. They also condemned any advocacy of religious hate. Religious beliefs had not to be abused to fuel extremism and confrontation. They also condemned violence and attacks against diplomatic missions around the world. They asked all political leaders, be they religious or secular, to call for dialogue and tolerance. The only answer to the darkness of intolerance and ignorance is the light of mutual respect, tolerance and dialogue. I quote from this statement. High Representative Vice President Cathy Ashton and the External Action Service, together with the European Union Special Representative Mr. Lambrinidis, have taken this forward at all levels and have condemned religious intolerance and discrimination on grounds of religion or belief wherever it happens. The High Representative herself has been particularly vocal to denounce violence on the basis of religion, such as in the case of the Central African Republic, where she strongly condemned on the 27th of March the targeted killings of civilians on the basis of religion and ethnicity, and expressed her concern on the vulnerability of minorities who are increasingly victims of retaliation. While stressing the need to fight impunity, she also expressed support to the efforts made by the transitional authorities to promote dialogue and mediation initiatives. The European Union has been engaged in initiatives of intercultural and interreligious dialogue in the spirit of openness, engagement and mutual understanding, including in the framework of UNESCO, the UN Alliance of Civilizations, the Anna Lindh Foundation and the Istanbul Process. With the signature of the UNESCO EU Memorandum of Understanding in 2012, a strengthened cooperation was launched. We share common goals, notably to consolidate democracy and human rights, preserve peace and foster sustainable development. This is why the European Union clearly promotes a stronger multilateral cooperation. EU funding to UNESCO projects include, for example, support for the training for young Syrian refugees in Jordan, the expert facility aiming at strengthening governance for culture in 13 countries, the safeguarding of living cultural heritage in Egypt, Jordan and Lebanon, and the preservation and restoration of Syrian cultural heritage or of Timbuktu's manuscripts. Education and culture are key pillars of the democratic societies we want. Education will remain a strong part of the overall EU development framework. Education shall promote understanding and respect for human rights, inclusion, cultural diversity, lifelong learning and learning to live together, all of which are essential to the realisation of peace, responsible citizenship and sustainable development. UNESCO's role in the Global Education First initiative remains important. We see culture as an enabler and driver of development. Support to culture is clearly support to development. A high-level meeting in New York on May the 5th, organised by UNESCO, will be the venue for further discussions on the important link between culture and development. The EU is also a strong defender of the diversity of cultural expressions. We were instrumental in the adoption of the 2005 UNESCO Convention, and one of the European Union's main objectives in our relations with third countries is to support cultural policy development and to promote this convention. Under the leadership of Commissioner Vassiliou and with the active participation of our delegation in Beijing, China has become the first pilot case illustrating the role of culture in people-to-people diplomacy and mutual understanding in the framework of our foreign relations. The Secretary General of the External Action Service, Mr. Pierre Vimont, has recently appointed in his office a coordinator on cultural matters who is working in complementarity with Member States, also promoting cooperation in this field. The European External Action Coordinator is active in making contact with a great variety of stakeholders with a deep engagement in the international cultural scene. The initiative of More Europe, supported by the civil society, is also active in bringing together several actors. The European Union Association of National Cultural Institutes has also been in the front line. The Parliament resolution rightly stressed the importance of the fight against the death penalty. We have a strong and principled abolitionist policy on that. We firmly believe that no cultural difference or perception could ever contest the fundamental right to life and human dignity. We have publicly condemned, and continue to do so, the use of the death penalty in any circumstances and in any country. We never cease to stress, either in our dialogues with third countries or through public diplomacy, the cruelness and irreversibility of this archaic form of punishment. The EU guidelines on death penalty clearly instruct us to act whenever and wherever this abominable practice takes place. In the UN context, the European Union has played a pivotal role in the adoption of the General Assembly resolution on moratorium of execution, and will continue this practice in this year's upcoming General Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And next speaker is Madam Giannakou.